Awesome. There we go. Well, thank you again for being on. If you could give just a quick little intro of who you are and what you do, that would be great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Nick. My name's Vipe Desai, and I used to be a surf turkey, and now I've expanded my role to be more of an entrepreneur, environmentalist, and a little bit of a political hack too. I like to say that I operate at the most dangerous and exciting intersection in the world, which is entrepreneurship, philanthropy, and politics. So lots of different projects going on in my world, lots of different things. And if I were an animal, I would say that I'm an octopus because I've got my tentacles in so many different projects and ideas. But that's just how I live. It's like I'm not satisfied focusing on one thing. I got to have several things, but they're all interconnected. So that's what's going on in my world right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, and like we were talking about earlier, I just love hearing from people such as yourself that kind of hold all these different things in the palm of one hand kind of. And it's always interesting to me to hear people when you kind of ask what you do, the people that kind of have this really put together explanation, and then other people that are kind of like, well, I do this and this and this and this. And it's kind of like it's interesting to see what comes of that, because it seems like, when you can't necessarily explain the one single thing that you do, it kind of means that there's all this other cool stuff going on that conversations like this can help pull out a little more.
Yeah, or it just kind of makes people go, okay, and then they lose interest because it is really hard, I think, for me to explain to people what I do and what all I do, because there's so many different things. And if you lined everything up that I did, I think most people would have a very hard time drawing a straight line to each other. So I think I always frame it in a way, depending on who I'm talking to where they can kind of understand and the conversation can start. But definitely a lot of different things going on.
Yeah. So I guess let's maybe start like with what you had mentioned there briefly about you testifying most recently, and then kind of back into more of the surf turkey days, and then start filling in some of the craziness in between.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Happy to, Nick. It still sounds funny for me to even put out the words that say I recently testified before members of Congress in DC. Just knowing where I started and all the things that I've done along the way that have led me to this opportunity to speak on behalf of, 2,400 businesses from California, Oregon, and Washington. But also, while I was in DC, I was representing almost 46,000 businesses from the East Coast, throughout the Gulf, and California and Oregon and Washington. But I've learned through my early days of surfing that a healthy ocean and a clean beach is important to the businesses that I'm involved in. And without a healthy ocean, my businesses and the businesses of my good friends may run into trouble. But I also understand, living here near the beach, if there's damage to our oceans, whether it's an oil spill or anything else, it disrupts other businesses, the restaurant, the hotel, any of the other local businesses that are in the area. So there's a ripple effect. And I've just gotten concerned and interested in some of the things that are going on. So when the Trump administration put out a plan to open up our coasts to offshore oil and gas drilling, I had to speak out, and I found others that were just as concerned, because we know what happens when there's an oil spill. Our economies are impacted, and you can see what happened in Louisiana and throughout the Gulf with the BP oil spill, and we don't want that happening anywhere else. So I got the opportunity to get engaged and also speak out. And my speaking out and talking about the impact of an oil spill on businesses, small, medium, and large, I think people were paying attention, and it made its way up to Washington, D.C. And I got a call one day asking if I'd be interested in testifying up on the hill about offshore oil drilling. And I was kind of like, which one of my friends is punking me right now? Who is this? Who is it? This is funny. But when I found out that it was serious, I took it seriously, and I said, look, if there's an opportunity for me to speak out on behalf of businesses, I'd be happy to do so, but I'm sure you can find somebody better. Lo and behold, 24 hours later, I got a call saying that they want me to come up, and 2 days later, I got the official letter from Congressman Lowenthal inviting me up to testify on April 2nd. So after that, it was off and running, preparing for my oral and written testimony and working with a team of people at Oceana to prepare for everything. And yeah, incredible experience. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed being part of the political process.
Yeah, that's insane. So before we kind of start to go back to the early days, what sort of process was involved with going to testify, and what did that all look like? Because obviously, after the little shell shock of, okay, this is real, it's kind of like, oh shit, now I have to get my butt in gear and really figure out how to handle this the right way.
Yeah, you're right. I wasn't sure what all I needed to do, and thankfully the committee staff were there to walk me through the whole process. They sent me over all the information. It's all basic stuff to a certain degree. One is that I've got to provide a truth and testimony form, and that I don't have any conflicts of interest, no skeletons in the closet. That I'm coming up there to tell the truth and who I'm representing and all that stuff. So really basic disclosures, which were easy. And then just understanding that there were some deadlines that I had to hit. And most of them were related to having my oral and written testimony submitted in the record 48 hours before I was going to testify. And then it was really kind of getting down to the details of, okay, what do I have to include in my oral testimony? What do I have to include in my written testimony? And what's the difference? The oral testimony, I had 5 minutes. That's it. And I had to be on point with delivering my oral testimony of 5 minutes, not going over, but sticking to the script. And then the written testimony could be longer and no more than 12 pages, but citing all the facts, the details, and everything.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And luckily, like I said, I worked with the team at Oceana to make sure that my facts were correct, and that the structure of my oral testimony and written testimony were intact and on solid ground. So, working with them helped me to frame everything up, and I shared it with them, and, we passed it back and forth, massaging it. And I went through a couple test readings with them too, to make sure that, okay, how do I sound? Is it coming through okay? Am I hitting the 5 minute mark? And, we got to the point where we could either, like, I was coming over like 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, I got to read faster, or I got to cut something out. And I'm like, I don't want to cut anything out of here. I got to just like faster. So I spent probably 4 or 5 days just really reading my oral testimony like every hour, just wanted to get it all down, and getting it submitted and everything. And then getting it sent over. And after that, it was really just showing up and, meeting the other witnesses who were testifying and talking and sharing ideas. And they were great people. And then really when it came down to the testimony, walking into the building where I was testifying, it's intimidating. It's a big building, it's a big room, and, there's tables where everybody is elevated in front of you. And it just looks really big. It's one of those things where it's like, you don't want to mess around in this room. I
was going to say, that's your opportunity to show up in a wetsuit and a board and just walk right in, but it's not going to happen when that's the situation around you.
Yeah, no, I definitely had to go out and get a suit, get it tailored, and put on a tie. And, in instances like this, optics matter. How you look, be, critical to how credible you are, and so forth. So I wanted to make sure that I represented the businesses and the nonprofits that I was working with that helped me get to DC. I wanted to make sure that I honored their work and their service and their message. So I really wanted to make it a good showing. And you know, once it started, it was really just kind of like, you know, pretty easy. It just flowed fairly quickly. I will, however, say that there was, I was warned that there might be fireworks. And, you know, Republicans, there might be some Republicans that might want to push back on me. And, you know, I was advised how to respond. And I said, hey, you know, I know it comes with the territory, so we'll just take it as it comes. And sure enough, I had a Republican congressman really push back on me pretty hard, you know, pretty much called me a liar and, you know, saying that I came up there without facts and just my opinion and emotions. And so at the end, each of us as witnesses were given 1 minute to have a closing statement. And so I had a closing statement prepared that I was going to read and reinstate the facts. And instead, I had turned it over and scratched a bunch of notes and everything. And I specifically, you know, responded to the congressman. And I, you know, I said, I didn't come up here with made up numbers. I came up here with facts. Wow. And that right there just set him off. So he started yelling at me and flailing his hands. And we kind of had this like 30-second heated exchange. And the chairman had to gavel in and, you know, kind of like take it down and not argue. And I finished up with a few seconds of my closing remarks. And, you know, I didn't get a chance to say everything I wanted to, but that 30 seconds really galvanized the hearing. And thankfully, the witness that was right after me picked up where I left off and just went right into the facts. So
that's incredible.
We couldn't have planned it any better. And we walked away, and everybody was really happy with the testimonies and what we did. And the media ate up the 30-second heated exchange. And that's kind of what the news out of it came, was that, you know, this exchange, and it kind of made the other congressman look a little silly, you know, for arguing with a witness who came with facts. So anyways, amazing experience, and I'm still kind of reeling from it, and I'm still fielding questions and thoughts and ideas. So really exciting. And I think I'm going to get invited to testify again at some point.
What a wild ride.
Wild ride.
Nice game time decision too, because that's always, you know, where the practice comes into play, where all of a sudden you're being tested on something that's a little outside of your comfort zone, and you're like, okay, time to step up or step out.
Yeah, you know, I attribute that to my good old punk roots back in the day. You know, I was channeling my inner Pennywise and Bad Religion, you know, inside of me. You know, and prior to going up there, I made a little like playlist with all these artists and everything to get fired up before my testimony. And I was channeling all that, you know, pent up punk rock energy and everything just in case I needed it. And I did. So
that's great. Yeah, I've pulled that play out of the playbook a couple of times when going into a couple of different situations, whether that's, you know, jobs or interviews or whatever, you know, just to get a little more hyped on what's going on.
Absolutely. Got to get hyped on this stuff.
Yeah. So real quick, before we kind of transition into where you were talking about more of your background there, is there a place that people can go to find more of that back and forth? Was it filmed, or is it all just kind of like written down?
Yeah, no, it is on YouTube, and it's on my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you just search for Vipe Desai, you'll see the 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes. You'll see the first 5 minutes of my testimony, and then the minute closing remarks where that heated exchange took place. So that'll be the best place to see it. And then there's a couple articles as well online that, you know, talk about the heated discussion and everything as well. That if people Google it, they'll find it. But awesome. Yeah, if you go to YouTube, you'll see it.
Cool. Sweet. I'm going to have to check out more of that too, because I had followed along a little bit with kind of your path to that situation, but then obviously like all this other stuff kind of started coming up, and then I lost track of it. So I'm excited to get more into that later.
Yeah, no worries. I can send you those links too if you want to include them in the show notes.
Yes, that would be great. So yeah, backing into more of the punk roots and how all of this started. I'm assuming, however, 30 years ago, whatever, you didn't think that you would be in that situation before Congress.
Absolutely. Look, I wish that I could say that all the things that happened over the last 30 years were planned out. But they weren't. They were purely accidental and driven from my heart and my passion. I graduated from college and I wanted to work in the surf industry because I loved surfing and worked at surf shops, never good enough to be a pro athlete or anything. But after graduating, I got the opportunity to buy a surf shop with a good friend of mine. And I took that opportunity and we, sold everything we had, borrowed money, begged, whatever we had to do to come up with the money. And that was 1991. And we bought a surf shop and, things started there. It was really just wanted to be in the surf industry, wanted to do what I could and learn. And all of a sudden I started, really kind of having an impact with my surf shop. I wanted to do things differently. I didn't want to carry the traditional big brands that were out there that were popular. I wanted to carry stuff that was off the beaten path and new stuff. And that was like Volcom and SMP and Joyride snowboards and Arnett sunglasses. I mean, it was all these products that the big shops didn't want to carry because there was this new wave of brands coming up, and that's what we wanted to do. And the other thing was that we started out as a surf shop, but we also liked to skate and snowboard, and that was also the same thing that was going on with Volcom. So when they came out with their clothing line, and we were one of the first 3 shops to carry Volcom because my college roommate was one of the founders, and we bought into that. We were like, finally, somebody else believes in this as well. So we kind of took that as a license to integrate that into the shop. So we started carrying surfboards, or we added snowboards and skateboards to our shop. And it's funny because the surf shops and the skate shops in the area called us out that we were like kind of like a kook shop. They're not even, they don't even know what they want to be. It's like, are they surf shop or are they snowboard shop or are they skate shop? You can only be one thing. And I'm like, well, what if we like doing all 3?
Yeah.
And we embraced that, and we saw that other people loved that too. All the kids in the neighborhood came together and they were like, oh gosh, it's like, I love to surf, I love to skateboard, and I love to snowboard, and it's so rad. And these brands aren't available everywhere, and this is the only place I can get it. And so that vibe started to emanate from our shop, and people just latched onto it. And it really was, we didn't know what we were doing necessarily. We just knew that we were following our hearts of like what we wanted to do. And, one of the things that we did there was we created a contest because we were like, okay, how do we market our shop? How do we get the word out there that we're here and that we're ready for business and we're, ready to have fun? And, we came up with this idea to do a surf and snowboard contest. One day you surfed, the next day you snowboarded, and in between, we loved music too. So we were like, well, wouldn't it be rad if we had this party and these bands came to play, and it would just fuel our passion for everything and get people fired up. So we did it. It was called the H2O Winter Classic. One day you surfed, one day you snowboarded, and in between were bands like Pennywise, Blink 182, 30 Seconds to Mars, Jimmy Eat World. I mean, all these amazing bands, and we were just having fun. We wanted to get the word out there about our shop. And that is what went on to inspire the Warped Tour and the X Games. So, our small little shop had a big impact on the action sports industry.
Yeah. So a couple questions going into that. Why did you decide to go more of the retailer route versus trying to build your own brand like it seemed like a lot of the people around you were kind of doing?
I honestly had no idea how to build a brand, what it meant to build a brand. I didn't even know what it meant to own a surf shop or anything. I was really just like, hey, if it gets me surfing more, I'll do whatever it is. And the retail store just happened to be something that was in front of me that I said yes to. I could have easily said no and ended up working in a completely different industry. But I was like, oh, surf shop, great. I'll try it. And I got lucky. That's all that it is. I had no desire, no goals, nothing motivating me whatsoever. It was just, I want to surf and I want to surf as much as possible. And if a surf shop helps me to do that, so be it.
Yeah, that's awesome because it's so pure. It seems like it stinks because a lot of people get into business for the wrong reasons almost, and it's cool to hear when people come into it from more of a place of heart and then pull all these other things together to really figure out how to get it done once they're in that situation.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience. Looking back on it, and if somebody came to me in this day and age saying that they were going to do what I did, I'd probably try and talk them out of it.
Yep.
Knowing how reckless I was, how immature I was at that age, not knowing what I was doing, and just luckily making it work. And I know it's been good for me. It's been a blessing, but I really had no idea what I was doing, and it could have gone any which way,
Yeah.
but it ended up working for me.
So what kinds of things ended up getting you through that whole time, and how did you start pulling on the necessary things that you needed in order to make that whole situation work? And then also kind of leading up to more of the event side of things, how did you end up getting all of those insane bands together? That has to be either you're getting them when they're in their prime, or you're having to dump tons of money into making that happen.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, there was no strategy. There was no thinking behind it. There was no experience. It was really just kind of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Yeah, let's do it and try and figure it out. And who wants to help? Oh, you want to help? Okay, great. Come on in. I don't know what we got to do, but do you know anybody that can help us with this? So it was really just kind of figuring it out on the fly and making it work. And I think that worked to my benefit because I didn't have any sort of guideline to anything. It was really just I was winging it and just going, I guess this is how you do it. And oh, that's not how you do it. Okay, well, let's change it next year. And it was just kind of a work in progress. And the bands were really our friends at that time. They hadn't even made it. I don't even, Pennywise, Blink, Jimmy World, 30 Seconds to Mars hadn't even been on the radio at that point.
Wow.
So we got them before they were in their prime. They were just doing their thing and we were listening to their music on surf, skate, snow videos. And like, wouldn't it be great if these guys played? And it's like, great. They were like, yeah, we'd love to play. So it was affordable. They were into it. It fit the lifestyle. It fit the contest and it fit the trends and everything. We were just doing what everybody wanted because we were like, we'd like this. And if we like it, other people will. And it was honestly just a work in progress. Every year we just kept figuring it out. And then I think towards the end there, it became a business. And that's when I think I really started to lose interest in it because I had all these sponsors, non-endemic sponsors who were coming to me to make me, ask me to do things to benefit their program, but I was compromising the vision for the event. So I was distracted. I don't think I gave 100% into the athletes and the contest and the music. And, some of that vibe suffered and I lost the passion and the drive for it and everything. And I was like, it's time to go out on a high note. It's like, let's not let this thing die and become a bunch of old guys, trying to keep their dream alive. Let's just leave it with a high and make everybody, stoked that they got to participate. And if you didn't get a chance to participate in it, you kept talking about it. And even to this day, I mean, geez, almost 25 years later, every time I go to a trade show or I run into guys in the industry, they're like, what do we got to do to bring the H2O Winter Classic back? Fun contest. There's still nothing like it, never anything like it. And, I say, hey, if you guys want to put it on, go right ahead. It's like, I'm not interested in that anymore.
Yeah. Kind of a chapter that just closed.
Yeah, it was a great chapter. I don't want to revisit it, and I want to do other fun things. But if anybody else wants to do it, more power to them.
Yeah. So what kind of things did, like you were mentioning a lot of all these things going on around you leading to your decision to kind of step away from it and move on to the next thing. Did you really know what the next thing was when you made that choice, and how did you know that it was time to move on? Because I'm always interested in these transition periods with people where it seems like some people think about it a little longer or sit in that, and then it, like that whole process of finally coming to terms with, okay, it's time to actually step into something else now.
Yeah. Good question. I think the last couple of years of owning a retail store really weighed on me because I was being pulled in so many different directions. One, having to manage the day-to-day business, the vendor relations, the buying of the product and everything like that, and the stress that comes with product not moving quick enough and having to meet payroll and all that stuff. It started to get, a little bit stressful and not as fun. And the other thing too is that I was really young when I started my surf shop, and I think I matured really quickly. Because I had to. I'm a business owner now, and there's all these responsibilities, so I can't mess around and I can't get away with doing stupid stuff because there's employees that rely on me to, support them. So I started to look at it and I said, retail is cool. It's fun. I've learned a lot, but I also saw that retail was going to be challenging in the coming years. If I didn't add more retail stores to my business, I might be challenged because PacSun was on the rise, Tilly's was on the rise, and all these chain stores were really kind of pushing in on the mom and pop retailer. The internet was starting to come up a little bit too. It was at the very early stages, and I really didn't know what it was about, but I kind of had the feeling that there was more challenges and headwinds coming my way. And I also felt that I was kind of like constricted within the four walls and the roof of the retail store. I wanted to do some other stuff. I was getting asked to consult with brands on their marketing initiatives and big picture thinking, and I wanted to explore some of that stuff and move outside my little bubble. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to try something different, and that I was over retail. And I just decided one day that, I'm gonna close down the store. And closing down the store would be the best thing because I wouldn't have to worry about selling it or anything. And I had made friends with some of the other retailers in the area. So it opened up the opportunity for them to carry some of the brands that I had exclusivity to. So now they got the opportunity to pick up these brands that they had wanted for so long. And now it's like, hey, I'm out of here. I want you guys to have these brands that I helped build because you guys will do them a great service and, helping them grow in your store and everything. And as I was transitioning, I started looking at maybe a marketing agency, some a consultancy that could help brands in the industry reach outside the corporate world and corporate companies that were trying to get involved in the action sports industry. Because at that time, the X Games were pretty big and everybody was trying to figure out action sports culture. So I was like, okay, let's try marketing, like a marketing agency.
Interesting. Yeah, that's such a crazy transition too. But I think it's also cool that you kind of allowed that business to seep into a lot of the more local communities around you instead of selling it out and then having, I think what's happening nowadays is a lot of larger venture capital firms are coming in and buying out these retailers, and it just stinks all around for everyone that's trying to compete with them when they have just these insanely deep coffers of money that they can throw at things, but also how the employees end up being treated. And, the whole process just seems like it's an absolute pain in the ass for pretty much everyone involved.
Yeah, it can be challenging for sure. And I mean, the biggest thing that weighed on me when I was closing my shop was everybody that worked for me and how close they had become to me. Like they were my friends, and they are still my friends to this day and age. I mean, our kids hang out together and everything. Yeah, they worked for me, but they also became my friends. And now I'm uncle to most of their kids. So it's still we're closer now than we were back then, and we continue to be closer. But the employees really weighed on me. I wanted the best for them, and I knew that, you know, giving them a new opportunity to explore new careers would be best. And if they wanted to get in the industry, I'd help them. A couple of guys wanted to go work in the industry, so I was happy to make calls on their behalf and, get them into the companies and everything. So yeah, that was something that really weighed on me as the towards the last year of the retail store.
Yeah, and that can't be an easy thing by any means, especially, when you're kind of the one running the show and all of a sudden you're stepping out and these people are, looking to someone else to try and say like, okay, what do I do now? Had you had any sort of conversations with some of those employees going into that decision, or was it just kind of like you were working through it yourself and then brought it to them once you had decided what was going to happen?
Yeah, I was working it in my head and with a few good friends outside of the store, just kind of weighing in and sharing with them the stress that I was experiencing. And I would say maybe even borderline like nervous breakdown, depression, and everything.
Wow.
I was just really burned out with everything going on. I think I took on too much, too soon, too quick, and wasn't able to manage it properly. And it just came to a head that it's like, I was like, man, I don't even want to come into the shop. I don't want to do anything. I don't even know if I want to be in this industry. And I don't think I want to surf. I mean, it was just really, I was down. And my friends that I had talked to said, look, it's maybe a good thing for you to just step away and walk away from this and, close the book. And, I got good advice, and I'm glad that I got that advice. And once I made that decision, I spoke to the employees and I told them what my plans were and my thoughts, and everyone supported me. That's one thing that I was really surprised with. I didn't get any pushback. They were all like, okay, no problem. We get it. Just tell us what you want us to do, and we're here for you. So I really love the fact that all these guys stepped in to help me during this transition. They weren't thinking about themselves. They were thinking about me and the shop. And as the final 3 months were coming down, I started getting into, a more clearer headspace. And I started thinking, okay, what do you guys want to do? What can I help you with? Because in a few months here, we won't be opening up the doors and you guys won't have a place to go to. So what can I help you with? And a couple guys were like, I'm going back to school. And it's like, okay, great. So you're fine. And they're like, totally fine. I'm going back to school. A couple of them were going to, go to study to become firemen or EMTs. And I'm like, great, you're in good hands. And a couple of them were like, I'd really like to work in the industry. I'm like, pick 3 brands. Okay. Tell me who they are, and I will walk you in to them and, help you find a job in one of those 3. And that's what I did with a couple of these guys. I told them, I go, pick your top 3 from choice 1, 2, and 3, and let's get you guys, into a career.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, those guys dedicated so much time to me that I owed it to them to, let them pursue their dreams and whatever they wanted to. I didn't want to leave them hanging high and dry or anything. And they've all like gone on to become executives in the industry. They're power players, as I call them. They're decision makers, and they're doing amazing work. So I'm really proud of what they're doing and what they've done.
Yeah, that sounds like probably one of the most incredible endings I think you could ever imagine when it comes to closing up a business. I feel like, usually when you think of endings, it seems like this very sad kind of thing. And it seems like for everyone involved, it was kind of this just absolutely new opportunity to really take the next step forward, doing whatever anyone really wanted to get into.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There were definitely some tears during the hugs and everything, as things were starting to wind down. But, they were also, hugs and tears of joy. We had such an amazing experience growing together and learning so much. And, while one chapter was closing, it wasn't that, hey, this is goodbye. See you later. I'm out of here. This is like, we're now going to be doing different things. But we're all still going to be hanging out and being friends, and our families are going to become even closer and all that stuff. So I made it a point to stay close to these guys. I didn't want them to drift far away from me whatsoever. So I made sure that I kept these guys as close as possible. And look, some of them have had some, some hard times, whether they got laid off. And I always told them that if they ever needed help with anything, to reach out. And, they have, and I'm fortunate to be able to have a platform where I can help these guys out and transition into other, jobs or other opportunities.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what was it like working with people that you considered that close friends? Because I think sometimes, obviously, what you're mentioning with being so stressed out that you decided that you needed to move on from the business entirely, there's got to be more within that situation where you're interacting with people on a day-to-day basis, and that stress has got to be bubbling out, and you're trying to make sure that it's not affecting the relationships around you. How are you balancing the business side with that personal relationship side?
Yeah. I think once I had decided that I was going to move on from the store, that I think really lifted a burden from my head. I think it was just acknowledging the fact that, I needed to move on. That was the first thing. And as soon as I said it and in my mind and I said it out loud, I just felt like a weight just being lifted off of my shoulder, and the air cleared out in my head and everything. And I could talk openly in a positive manner. And, I got tremendous support. And I think the other thing that helped me was that the vendors that we had were incredibly supportive and helpful. My employees were incredibly supportive and helpful. The friends and family were also there. But I'll tell you, the most amazing thing that happened for me was all the local families, when they heard that I was going to be closing down the shop, they started coming there and hearing from the moms and the dads and the kids and everything, going, man, it's like, we're going to miss you. You're like our family. It's like, you helped raise some of our kids and all these people in our community. And it's like, I was like, oh my God, now you're making me feel bad that I'm abandoning you. And, I'm like, crap. But it felt so much to me to get these conversation with parents and everything. And they sent me cards, and, I still get Christmas cards from these families, 25 years later, and, it was great. It felt great that I got to have an impact in some of these people's lives, and the families and the parents realized that. The schools realized that. I got, outreach from some of the schools and the teachers and everything, and on all that stuff. So I felt really good that, I had had an impact, and people there understood what I was going through, and that they were going to help me get through it. And they knew that it wasn't goodbye. It was just going to be another chapter. So, yeah, now I'm kind of thinking about it going, gosh, what an incredible, experience that I had to go through that the way that, it unfolded.
Yeah, totally. And what an awesome opportunity to really be able to connect with people in the community, like with kids, because it seems like there's so many of these extreme sports, whether that's skating or snowboarding or surfing or whatever, stuff like that, that really gives kids an outlet to kind of focus on something. Because even though they're potentially getting into some crap while they're growing up within those situations, it's entirely less than what they would be if they didn't have something like that as an outlet.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we had fun at our shop, no doubt. We included as many kids as possible, while all the other shops kicked them out, for hanging out and loitering and everything. We knew that the kids in our neighborhood and in our little town enjoyed hanging out at the shop, and we looked after them as if they were our own little brothers and sisters and everything. And we knew that the parents were working, and we kept an eye on them. So while we had fun, we gave them a place to hang out, we also were really strict. I mean, it's like I wouldn't put up with anything. I mean, I was, I let it know that myself and the other adults that worked for me there were free to give out discipline,
Mm-hmm.
not that we, we didn't hit any kids or anything, not by that, but I'm just saying that if we saw kids getting out of line, we pulled them aside and we talked to them and we told them, that's not right. You can't do that. And if you do that, you can't hang out here.
Yeah, it
And
seems like a lot of situations are missing that kind of parental guidance nowadays with how children are being raised.
yeah, it can be tough, and I don't blame parents. I mean, I'm a parent myself. You can get busy. There's a lot of stuff going on, but I just felt that if we were going to be good citizens of our community, we had to, help police the kids and everything and give them the best opportunity and look out for them and have that trust with the parents and everything too. So it was really organic, really a mom and pop type of an experience, and the relationships that we had with the parents, the kids. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times like parents would be like, "Hey, can you send so and so home? It's time for dinner." Absolutely, he's here. We'll send him home. Um, I'll tell you, we were such a family. This is going to sound so funny, okay? But one of our employees got an opportunity to become a rep, and he was like, "Hey, this is an opportunity for me to grow in the industry. What do you think? Is it okay if I take this job?" And I was like, "Please do. I don't want you here forever because you need to make more money. It's like I can only pay you so much, but I want you to have these opportunities." And I made it known to everybody that any opportunity that comes up, don't feel bad about leaving. I want you guys to take these opportunities. And so he took this opportunity to become a rep, and he became a kick-ass rep. His name's Bill Keller. He's one of the best reps out there for the industry. And I remember when, he and his wife and I and my family are really close. He was the best man at my wedding. But I remember, he was hustling, working crazy hours. His wife was working crazy hours, and they had a baby. Okay. And there were times where they were like, "We can't find a babysitter to watch our little guy." And they would just drop him off at the shop and I'd watch him all day. It's like
Super cool.
leaving an infant at a surf shop all day. We'd feed him, change diapers, do whatever we needed to do. And it's like people just couldn't believe it, but that was the type of business that we were. It's like we were all family. And it's funny. It's like I still think about it to this day when I see the little kid, who's still close to me and everything. He's now like 25, but it's like I'm like, "You used to hang out in our shop." It's like, so it was fun. It was a really, really good experience and great people to work with.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that. It's got to be wild to see, not just one or two, but like a handful of people that were around when they were little ones, and now they're, in the same industry doing the same stuff, and they're grown adults trying to, pass the flame on to the next generation.
Yeah, I'm really proud of these guys and what they've done, and they've all become leaders in the industry in some way, shape, or form. And they're good humans, they're good people, and I can see that some of the things that I got to share with them when they worked for me, they're carrying on in their work as well, with compassion, in how they treat people, but also they're serious as well, and they're concerned about other people and mentoring them and helping others succeed in everything. So I really enjoy seeing that. So whenever I see them, it's like it's a reunion, but they're also telling me all the things that are going on in their world. And a lot of these guys still reach out to me when they run up against some problems. They'll say, "Hey, I need to meet with you right away. And my company's going through some heavy shit and I don't know what to do. Can you kind of just, be my eyes and ears, and can I just unload on you?" And absolutely, so it's been interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's kind of what I had done with Troy there for a little bit, was just reaching out to him to talk through some stuff as it related to business and everything. But yeah, so being a part of that whole experience, like how much of that kind of community caring nature and everything that surrounded that came from you trying to build that in purposefully into the business or how you interacted with people, and how much of it was just kind of a byproduct of the environment that you were in?
I think it was a combination, in all honesty. One, it was the way that I was raised. One thing I remember that my mom and dad always told me was, it doesn't matter who comes to see you, you always offer them food. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter who it is, and it's like that kind of family, attitude of welcoming strangers, into your home or your business or anything like that was just something that my parents taught me. And I wanted to create that open family atmosphere that it's like, it's not me being your boss, it's us working together, because if we like what we do, we should all work together to protect it and make sure that we're doing the best that we can. So I think by me allowing the people that worked for me and in trusting them with everything made them feel more part of it, and made them feel like they had ownership in the decision making and the culture and the vibe and everything that we put out. So I'm glad that I was able to share that, but even more glad that they were willing to receive it and embrace it, and say, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do, and I want to be part of this culture. Um, but I think it was very helpful, and it's still helpful to me in this day and age. With other businesses that I'm involved in and everything, it's culture. It's like you treat people like treat people. You treat people like people. I treat them like family. I care for them, and I try and help them with whatever personal or professional needs that may arise. And, I appreciate the fact that they want to work for me. And they have the choice to go work anywhere else, and they chose me. So I think for me, culture is really important, and having that relationship with people, and knowing that, I appreciate what they're doing for me and with me. But I also let them know that I would never get in the way of any opportunity that came up for them to, progress and forward their career and make more money. I tell people that all the time from the get go, that, I will never fault you or, look down upon you if you take another job. In fact, I would encourage it. And I think by stating that up front, I have a great relationship, a working relationship with these
Mhm.
folks, that they know that there's not this battle of like me trying to swindle them for less pay or get them to do stuff that I wouldn't do, or, they feel guilty that, oh, Vipe's going to feel, angry, or he's going to, hate me if I go somewhere else and, whatnot. And I've looked at it in the sense that if I can help other people continue to progress in their journey, hopefully they end up somewhere where I might end up needing them at some point, and that's worked out for me numerous times, where people move into positions at an elevated level, and I can call upon them if I need a favor or if I have a question or a need, and they're like right there just saying, whatever you need, you just tell me. So I feel great that I have that relationship with people who worked for me over the last 30 years. I mean, I don't think there's a single person that's worked for me that I don't have a good relationship with to this day.
Yeah, that's incredible to see how much of a through line that's been for each kind of different step along your own journey, and how much it's still relevant in the things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, it's been absolutely relevant. And seeing these folks grow in their career and become leaders and mentors and everything like that. It's kind of funny because I think, some of the guys that worked for me, regarded me as their mentor, even though it wasn't official or anything like that. But I looked out for them, and they knew that I looked out for them, and they could come to me with any question or concern, personal or professional. But now I look at a lot of these guys as my mentors, where I'm like, I need to pick your brain, make some time, take me out to lunch, and I get to, ask them for advice. And I think they feel, a lot of joy and be able to kind of like, share that with me. and I soak it all up. So it's fun. It's a two-way street now, but I think I get these guys to give me a little bit more mentorship than I probably gave to them.
It's all coming back around.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So backing up to the retail experience, what ended up happening after that? How did you figure out what the next step was?
Yeah, the next step after retail, I kind of didn't know what I was going to do, but a friend of mine suggested that we look at starting a marketing agency, a youth marketing agency, one that would service the endemic industry and trying to help them grow with sponsorship and maybe partnerships with corporate brands outside of the industry and vice versa, talking to the corporate brands and telling them how to communicate and connect with the action sports industry a little bit more. And, you know, how do we become this bridge to bring people together? And we knew we had a good strategy. You know, we had the credibility, we had the relationships and everything. And, you know, in all honesty, we got to put it to use. So, you know, I think your listeners will appreciate this, but in '98, a little Austrian beverage company came calling and said that they needed help penetrating the US market. And, you know, we were like, sure. So we helped create their action sports marketing strategy and launched them here in the US. But that's Redbull.
Pretty
So, you
crazy.
know, pretty crazy. The rest is history. You know, back then, I think they were about a $35 million brand, barely playing in the US market. And we put together a strategy on the back of action sports, and it resonated with the team there, and we got to test it out, and it totally worked. And after that, it was just like, you know, pedal to the metal going.
Yeah. And over 20 years later, it's still working, and not just working here in the US, but globally.
Globally, and other brands too. You know, Monster, Rockstar have used that same strategy. GoPro used the same strategy because they took a bunch of the energy drink guys. So yeah, it's a strategy that definitely works. And you know, I'm glad that, you know, I got to be part of that strategy, and I led the team that helped spearhead some of that stuff. And you know, the guys at Red Bull do great work. They're good people. They honor and respect the industry that I love so much. It's been good. It's been good all around, I think.
So yeah, so how did that end up working then? Were you kind of just a contractor for Red Bull, or did you have some other accounts within that? And how did you end up putting together that entire package for them and actually going about executing on a lot of it?
Yeah, I was an independent contractor through our agency. So they hired our agency to do the work. And I led the effort on the strategy. And the strategy was, let's get you guys integrated into the action sports industry. And it's not through advertising that this is going to happen. It's going to be through relationships. And by the way, let us show you how we build these relationships. And that was through launching Red Bull at the 1998 Summer X Games in San Diego. And we went down there, and I think at that time Mountain Dew was the sponsor, and I think they'd invested about $2 million into their sponsorship, and we came along with about a $70,000 strategy just for that week and a half of the X Games, and just schooled them. And Red Bull guys were just like freaking out, just like, holy smokes, this is incredible. Look at all the athletes that are interacting with our product. All these guys want to work with us. Look at the brands. Look at what's going on, the hype and the buzz. And this was pre-social media too. So they got it. They saw it in action. And from that point, they were just like, all right, you know, do you guys want to come and work in-house? And I was like, no, we want to do our own thing because there's other stuff that we're working on that we're really fired up about. So how about we just work at an arm's length, but let us help you find the people to build out your team and your staff. Funny enough, I wrote the org chart for Red Bull on an airplane going from here to Utah to scope out an event for them with their then marketing director. And he was like, this is incredible. You know, it's like, okay, how do I get these people plugged in and how do we build this out? And, you know, we came back and started, you know, introducing them to the companies and to people and letting them work the angle. And it just kind of grew from there organically.
Yeah, so how much are you pulling on your previous experience within being more of a leader in the retail environment and coupling that with pulling from knowledge from other people within the industry that you know? Because that's got to be a huge undertaking to go from, you know, working on your own brand to all of a sudden trying to blow out this other brand globally, but in a way that makes sense and stays true to who you are and this entire industry that you're a part of.
Yeah, you know, I looked at it like this. At that time, I felt as if our industry and the brands and especially the athletes were being exploited by, you know, companies outside of the industry. And to me, I was a purist. I was like, how dare these guys shit on my industry? You know, have they no respect? You
Mhm.
know, that was my attitude. And I looked at it and said I could, you know, be a hater and call these guys out, or I could use my agency and my network to show these guys the path to being good partners in our industry. And if they were, it would be lucrative for them. And I wanted to put all the knowledge, all the relationships that I had, and understanding how athletes work and everything like that. I wanted to put all that in play, and that's what I got to do with helping Red Bull out here. And the good thing is that they had a team of people that got it. Their whole thing was like, we know what we want to do. We know what it looks like when we see it, but we just can't put our finger on it. So when I, you know, laid it out for them, they were all on board. They're like, yes, this is exactly what we've been waiting for. This is what we've wanted to put our finger on. So it was really that they were open and totally on board 100% with the strategy, and they got it and they saw the opportunity and were all in, you know, no hesitancy whatsoever. So for me, I felt as if that if I could, you know, help more brands like Red Bull come into the industry, pay the athletes more, support events and everything, and sponsor events and do it authentically, incredibly, you know, I would have done my job and I would feel good that, you know, my industry is being represented and, you know, people are, you know, getting paid good.
Yeah, definitely. And it's got to be crazy to kind of recognize the fact that their team was able to handle that and take it and keep moving it forward. Because I think the difficulty sometimes can come in that you're trying to play the role that you're trying to play, which is be this steward, I guess. But the people that you're trying to kind of help along the process are kind of fumbling a little bit along the way and don't necessarily get it. And so it's got to be crazy to watch someone take that baton and just take off with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I got that from day one when I sat with the Red Bull team and they were just a handful of guys out of, you know, Santa Monica, was that the way they spoke to us, the questions they asked, and the way they responded with the answers I gave them, they were paying attention. They were serious. They wanted to be real and true. They weren't trying to come in and exploit anything. Their whole thing is like, we are genuinely interested in, you know, being part of this industry. So that was easy. You know, I didn't have to battle with anybody who was trying to do it for the wrong reasons. They already had a good team of people. They just needed a little bit of guidance. And once they saw the ideas unfold, they saw how it worked, they saw the organic nature of how the excitement was growing, they immediately got it. And they knew that they had to follow this as opposed to try and get in the way and block and tackle and everything. They just had to let it happen. And I'm stoked that they did, because that, you know, I think if they hadn't, it probably wouldn't have gone their way.
Definitely. Yeah. So what was it like saying no to their offer to kind of bring you in as more of an actual internal piece of their team? Because it's, from my perspective now, obviously looking back, it seems like that would be a very heavy decision knowing how big of a company they are now. But obviously they weren't that big then. So did it feel like that no was as difficult of a decision as I'm thinking it is looking back?
No, I mean, look, you can't look back on stuff like that. I think you'll beat yourself up. There's plenty of things that I could look back on and say, gosh, I wish I would have done this and that and this and that. And it's all timing and it's all frame of mind. At that time, my frame of mind was that I was having fun helping brands in the industry look at bigger opportunities, and brands outside of the industry look at my industry in a different light. So for me, I saw so many more opportunities to be more helpful than to be just attached to one company. And I don't look back on it in any way. I mean, I've got a great relationship with the guys at Redbull. They do incredible work, and they've stayed in touch with me, and I've been able to help them out with a couple of other initiatives that they are working on internally as well. So for me, no regrets, no remorse. I'm just stoked that they have continued to be honorable partners in the action sports industry and have done right with athletes and everything. So I feel good about that.
Definitely. So can you talk a little bit more about the other things that you mentioned having gone on too? Because it's cool to hear that after you transitioned out of that initial retail environment, this was your next step. And it seemed like this step ended up opening all these other doors where you're kind of like, okay, this is where I see myself playing a role in all of this. And here's where I can start to insert myself a little bit more.
Yeah, having the shop and all the things that came from there, the relationships and the events and everything, and then having the marketing agency and all the stuff that I did there, one could look back and say, wow, it's like, okay, great accomplishments. It's like, okay, all the boxes are checked. But for me, I was constantly hungry to learn more. And one thing that I knew was that I was really good at marketing. I knew it, and I had no schooling whatsoever, no college degree in marketing, but I knew how to leverage my network and my relationships to help other businesses or help people in the industry, achieve what they needed to do. So I was getting asked for marketing consulting, all across the board in so many different industries. But I'll tell you, the biggest opportunity that came to me that really transformed my career was when I had the agency, and the guys at Surfrider Foundation, a nonprofit, reached out to me and asked if I would do some pro bono marketing work for them. And, at that time, I really didn't know the details of how nonprofits operated and, what it really meant to do pro bono work and what all was involved. But I was curious. So I took the opportunity to learn more about that and see what I could do. And I created some award-winning campaigns for them. And, I got to, understand what Surfrider's role was and what they did to protect our oceans and how important it was. And wow, it's like, these guys are doing amazing work. How come you guys aren't bigger? I want to help you. And I got invited to join their board of directors. And it was my first introduction to, really playing at a higher level than just an executive or a CEO or a founder or anything like that. It was, now I'm sitting in a room with about 15 other smart people helping to guide the direction and the work of this organization that's doing incredible things to protect our oceans all around the world. So, I got to inject my marketing ideas into the mix, help grow more opportunities with cause-related marketing partnerships with corporations, and also expand my network and understanding. And I can tell you that that opportunity opened up more doors for me than anything else that I've done. I mean, serving on a nonprofit board has been educational and inspiring in so many different ways. And I've continued to serve on other boards and continue to grow personally and professionally. And, just finding ways to help other people that are doing rad stuff do things even better and bigger.
Yeah, that's a beyond an incredible opportunity. What was it like stepping up into that role? Because you had mentioned it being this kind of next level thing where now it's that you're kind of above that level of a CEO and there's all this other stuff going on. It seems like not only do you have to learn some new skills to be able to really thrive in that environment. But you also, there's got to be, you know, a level of a learning curve there where all of a sudden you're in this completely new space and you have to figure out how you really get by and thrive in that environment.
Yeah, look, I didn't have any training to go on a board. I didn't even read about it or anything like that. It was really just like, hey, we'd like you to serve on our board of directors. And I'm like, sounds cool. What does that mean? Do I get paid? It's like, no, you actually have to pay to be on our board. And it's like, wait, how does that work again? You know, oh, you're a charity. Okay, great. I'm giving you money to do the work that you do and fulfill your mission. Okay, I got it. This is going to be a hard one for me to swallow, but okay, I think I'm convinced. And for me, I looked at it as a challenge, but I also looked at it as, let's see what happens. And, I was open to learning, I was open to listening, and I was open to discussing and openly debating with our board on what we should do. So I really matured a lot in, you sit around the room with, 14 other smart people who are talking about what this organization should do and how it should focus on stuff and what it should do and how it should go about it. It's pretty high level stuff. And, you really grow up fast and you realize that you have to contribute to the conversation, and sitting idly back doesn't work. So for me, I learned that I had to speak up and speak out when I wanted to, be heard. And I knew I had to make my points clear and precise. I couldn't do it in a combative way or because I said so or anything like that. I had to take into other people's opinions, perspectives, and help them to see things in a different light, and I had to be open to seeing things in their way. So it really kind of opened up, being a little bit more diplomatic and in being in conversations that were new to me. And what I learned the most was that if I got into a situation that I didn't know what I was doing, I had to ask the right questions, because if I ask the questions, the ball's always in my court, as opposed to somebody trying to ask me a question that I couldn't answer. If I ask the question, then they're always feeding me information and I'm learning. And as I'm learning, the pieces are kind of all falling in place in my head and I'm learning a little bit quicker. So I've always gone into situations with questions of like, okay, what do I need to do? How does this work? What do you do? How does this work? How does that work? And that's allowed me to learn really quickly.
Totally. Yeah, and it seems like it set you up for more of the path that you're on today, which is a lot of the stuff that you're doing with your interviews and podcasts, but also with the testifying side of things and learning a lot more about all the issues that are going on within the more of the environmental space and kind of just the mix of all three of those, which is funny because it brings me back to your intro and how it's these kind of three different buckets all colliding.
Yeah, I've learned that I can utilize and leverage the experience and the relationships and the board positions and the marketing things that I've done and everything and put them to use for something good. So I love serving on boards. I serve on quite a few right now, and that's also led me to serving on corporate boards. I serve on the board of a commercial real estate company that's publicly reporting, and it's doing north of $500 million now. And I love what they do. So it's all these experiences are colliding and they're giving me more to contribute in the boardroom. And I find myself in a position where, I think a few years ago I became unemployable. Nobody's going to hire me. So what I have to do is kind of go out there and create my own opportunities. And the good thing is that people are coming to me saying, we can't afford you. And we can't, we know we can't take up 100% of your time because you got all these other things going on, but can you serve on our board? Or will you look at investing in our company and playing a role that way? So for me, like I said, it's like my spirit animal is an octopus, it's like I got tentacles and all these different things, but the big thing for me now is so many people have helped and supported me in pursuing my goals and my dreams that now I've got to be this fire hose that helps other people achieve their dreams, because they want to work really hard for their stuff. And I'm kind of slowing down in my age of going, okay, I want to be a little bit more precise. I want to spend time with my kid. I want to surf a little bit more. I still want to work hard. I still want to work 60 hours a week, but I got to make it more precise in what I do. So I've got to use that energy and harness it and, throw it in a direction that makes sense. So if I can help other businesses succeed, other nonprofits succeed, and it fits my passion around protecting the ocean and the environment and protecting the businesses that my friends work in the industries, I feel pretty good about what I do.
Totally. Yeah. And it's crazy to see how, and I mean, maybe this is, again, me kind of looking back on it, but it seems like it was kind of this perfect transition into each of these next steps for you. Obviously it doesn't feel like that when you're going through it, but it was like you're building on the base before it, and it's just stacking onto itself, and you're learning all these things in each level that are helping you to succeed in the one that comes after it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. If I look back, everything that I've done, couldn't have been achieved had I not done the previous thing. Had I not gotten the invitation to serve on the board of Surfrider Foundation, none of these other opportunities or actions would have been taken, most likely. I might still have my agency. I might still doing piecemeal work. I might be doing a couple other things, but I wouldn't have learned all the things that I did. I wouldn't have, expanded my network of all these smart people that I could pick up the phone and call them up and say, I need some advice. Hey, I'm thinking about this. Hey, I want to connect you with so-and-so. Can you make time for lunch? It definitely, looking back on it, everything does feel connected and is what has kind of led me to where I'm at. But if you went back 30 years ago and, tried to throw a dart and said that this is where I would be landing, in the next few months or my next gig, all bets are off. I would not have even guessed what was going to come down the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely wild. So within the Surfrider deal, kind of bringing that back full circle, it seems like obviously what we were just talking about with learning a couple things at each stage that help you get to the next thing. What other things, other than more of the communication and people side, did you start to learn within that boardroom that's helped you to get to what the next level of everything else was after Surfrider?
Gosh, I think, it's kind of like what I said earlier. I think, when you're in a position on a board, you're kind of acting as one person. 15 people have to work together as one collective voice. So I looked at collaboration being really important, working together and not arguing to be right, but debating to find the best solution, was what I got out of being on the board. And that I had to, if I had people there that came from different perspectives and different walks of life, it would behoove me to involve them in the decision-making process and let everyone be heard. So there were times where we were going down the path on some of these decisions, and, whether it was myself or other board members, we'd say, it feels like we got a good conversation going here, but you know what? There's a few board members who aren't here. We should delay in making this decision until we talk to them, because they may have a different perspective. So slow and steady and making sure that everybody is heard and that we are making a decision that everybody agrees on and can get behind. And I think that's helped me out quite a bit when I sit down with other investors, when I sit down with people who are launching businesses. I'm listening to them. I'm taking in what they're saying, and I'm processing this to give them the best feedback or advice or answer that they're looking for. And, when you're in a boardroom, it's always a collaborative and collective decision. You're working with other people, and whether you appreciate them or not, they're on your team. They're not on another team. So, I think that maturity and understanding that I have to be open to listening to other perspectives and opinions, regardless of agreeing with them or not. I have to listen, and, it's healthy to share what I think, and it's also healthy to hear what they think, to get to the right decision. So I think that's been very helpful to me in so many different fronts. I mean, even, last week when I was testifying, I think had I not had board experience in debating and discussing some issues, I might not have been in a frame of mind to, push back on the congressman that, wasn't having, my testimony.
Totally.
So you never know where some of these experiences are going to come into play. You might just be learning and going through these processes and going, gosh, it's like, I didn't really get anything out of it. I don't know. But then like 4 years later, you're like, oh my gosh, that one time that I was in this boardroom and we had this discussion and things got crazy and all that stuff, and we felt happy afterwards. This is that experience that I'm lined up for. And what I find is that I get called in to moderate some discussions with executives as well. I think people use me as a bit of a confidant that, I can be brought in if there's some stickiness to an issue or a point that they can't make a decision on, and there's division between the troops and all that stuff. And I'll come in and I'll listen to everybody, and I'll look at it from an independent, unbiased perspective, and I'll share my input, and I'll work with the teams to come together and bring them back together to make the right decision and feel like a team again. And it's not something that I charge for. It's just, I think people look at it and go, hey, Vipe is Switzerland. We could bring him in and he's going to not take sides, and he's going to give us the best advice, and, he's not going to judge us or anything. And, it's been crazy. Some of the stuff that I've brought into, from, friends who are going through, some pretty tough times with their companies, whether it's bankruptcies or, hostile takeovers or, investors or shareholders who are grumpy, things like that. So, I think all those board positions and those time in the boardrooms have prepared me for some of those opportunities. So I like playing moderator and referee when it comes time.
Yeah, that's got to be wild. And it's interesting that kind of position. Obviously, you mentioned not charging for it in any way, but it's interesting that kind of position exists, because as I kind of work my way to different levels, I've always thought through how interesting it is to think through the fact that there are some people that are higher up within a company that are disagreeing on things, and without having some sort of third party that can be Switzerland, but also have enough of an understanding of what's actually going on to be able to help them with that, is like a very unique situation to be in.
Yeah, it is. And, once again, as you were saying earlier, it's like all these things prepared me for these opportunities, even though I wasn't thinking 10 years ago, it's like, hey, one day it'd be great if people called me, to help work out the problems. It didn't cross my mind whatsoever. And now, because of the articles that I write, the nonprofits that I support, the small businesses that I invest in, and I think word has gotten around, and when I talk to people and everything, the way I present myself, and I respect these people's dreams and their time and what they're going through, that, I think that relationship builds really quickly to where it's like, we need somebody to come in and maybe help us unstick some of this stuff. Would you be interested in coming in? And, they know that I'm not charging for it, because it's also a learning experience for me. But, I get compensated in, in other projects. So I have my projects that compensate me. This is not one way that I want to earn a living. And I think not being compensated makes it easier when I'm in the room with these guys. You know, their whole thing is like, this guy's going to say stuff and it's not attached to any payment, check, or any sort of outcome or anything like that. He's just trying to help us get through this situation. And, you know, it's funny. It's like I get called in to help athletes with, you know, with their, like agents and athletes still call me in to help them with their negotiations with that they're going through with the big brands, you know, and they're like, these guys offered us this. What do you think? And I'll come in and I'll say, well, I think you might want to massage it a little bit differently, you know, and sure enough, they end up getting the deal, you know,
Yeah.
but it's fun sharing the knowledge.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about you mentioned it not being a way to make a living or bring in an income, but it's interesting to think about the fact that that is kind of a secondary way back to that, because you're being put in these one-off situations where you're able to understand more context into different ways of making decisions within different environments and different inputs and difficulties, and how much that can kind of help you with other situations in the future that might help you with something that might lead to something more monetary.
Yeah, you're going to probably have to cut that last part out because I don't want the people that I work with learning about that stuff that I monetize in some way. But no, just kidding. No, you're totally right. Look, I look at it in the sense that I need to constantly be learning. And every time I'm in this situation, I'm learning more. And if that helps me to be more effective in some of the other things that I'm involved in where there is compensation and work, so be it. You know, I feel as if that's an investment in myself. I'm investing time to learn and learn from others as well. Even though I might be helping them out, realistically, they're helping me out too. They're helping me to become, you know, more diplomatic and, you know, a better listener and, you know, better advisor. And, you know, all of those things help me to be better in the boardroom with all the organizations that I work with. So I'm able to use it in other ways. If it's not direct, you know, it's indirectly, I'm using it in other ways.
Yeah. So what's it been like over the course of, the 30 years that you've gone through all these different things to the point where you're at now, where you're seeing all these different situations pop up and all these different difficulties? There's got to be certain things that kind of show up as being recurring themes with situations that end up showing up more often, or difficulties, or maybe, things of that that you end up seeing more often throughout different things that people come to you with questions on.
Yeah, you know, there's definitely a pattern, and I've tried to build the last couple of years of my career around those patterns that come around. So there's the pattern of career and leadership. So I'm always getting people hitting me up for career and leadership advice, and I've enjoyed sharing it, but I look at it and go, gosh, you know, I don't mind doing this, but you know, I've met some pretty rad people in my life. So why don't I, you know, grab career and leadership from them and share it with others? And that's why I created the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the Army of Gamechangers podcast. It's like all of these people from different walks of life have had amazing experiences. And all I want to do is extract the best career and leadership insight. So it's like, if I don't know you and I can't connect with somebody, I still have something to direct them to and say, if you need career or leadership insight, check out my podcast, you know, because I can only talk to so many people in a
Mm-hmm.
day. But if you want to learn a lot, here are my friends that I admire and respect, and I've taken the time and they've taken the time to contribute something to your career or leadership. So, you know, that's one side of it, career and leadership insights that I get called upon quite a bit. The other thing is nonprofit growth. Nonprofits are an interesting business model. I understand how they work. I also understand how they need to maybe update and evolve their business model. So I get a lot of nonprofits asking me to serve on their boards and come in with like the insights and help mentor the executive directors and the CEOs of the organizations to help them become more effective. So, serving on boards is one thing, and I've started to write articles that, will hopefully reach more of these nonprofits and groups that I can't meet with on a regular basis. And I can't serve on all the boards. But it's like, hey, here's some things that can help you out. And now I'm finding other people that, that I've served on the board of. And when a company calls me up and says, hey, we'd love to have you join us on our board, and I say, thank you, but I'm spread thin right now. But here's 3 people that I highly recommend that you guys should look at because I've worked with them on other boards. And I think what you need is one of these guys. So, having that network and arsenal of board members that I can call upon and say, I want to plug you in here. So that's one thing. Entrepreneurship is another thing. I love working with small businesses and entrepreneurs who are trying to launch their businesses, and anything that I can do to help them cut corners and shave costs. I love that stuff. That's where I get really fired up in helping these entrepreneurs realize their dreams. And then the political realm too, I never thought I'd get involved as involved as I am right now in politics, but I realized that there's a lot of stuff going on in our world right now, and especially in our country. And I cannot, sit back and just idly watch it, transpire without saying something or speaking up or standing out. And, so I'm a little bit more active in the political world and working with, lawmakers and senators and helping guys get elected and, helping craft policy and legislation. And, now getting asked to testify up in Congress, it's like, hey, I can insert my business experience, my concern for, the ocean, and it's all wrapped up together. So it's all kind of playing out with the themes, and I'm just kind of like there with the buckets to kind of capture all that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an interesting segue into kind of the last little section that I was really interested in talking to you about. And it's so cool to see people such as yourself that come from this business background and kind of follow these steps all the way through and hit this stage that it seems like a lot of people have been tuning into lately, which is like that business aspect is just one piece of this larger pie when it relates to the environment and treating people better and running businesses more effectively. And it's just like there's all these little through points that are connected, and it's cool when people are starting to put those pieces together and say you can't just hit one individually. You kind of have to look at the broader thing and really understand how they're all playing with each other. So how did you end up going from surf rider to more of these kind of environmental and political sides of all of these different things that you have going on, and what does that all look like?
Yeah. I think one thing was that what I learned with my work with ocean conservation groups is that it's a small, tight-knit community between the organizations and the people that are on the boards and everything. And I think what happened was, I think I developed a reputation as a good board member. And I also came, I think Surfrider Foundation, I know Surfrider Foundation is a very respected organization too. So it was 2 things: coming from an organization that was highly respected, but then also, word getting out that, I was a good board member, and I brought good insights into the boardroom, and helped, fulfill the mission and help support the leadership at these organizations. So I think it was a little bit of reputation on all ends. And, with Surfrider Foundation, I served there for 6 years. There's 3 2-year term limits that you can serve. And while I was sad to go, I was also excited to open up my seat to new people that wanted to come in. And I looked at it and went, all right, where do I go next? And I think within 30 days of terming off of Surfrider's board, I started getting inquiries from other nonprofit boards just saying, we've got a spot. We want you on our board. What does it look like? What do we have to get you on, and everything like that? So I had those opportunities presented to me. And with the political side, one of the gentlemen that I served on the board of at Surfrider was involved in politics, and I had become really good friends with him while at Surfrider Foundation. And as I was leaving, you know, he said, "Look, I want to give you some time to think about this, but I really think you would be good getting involved in the political process, and I would love to share with you what my organization does in the political side and see if I could bring you into it." So, you know, I was kind of like, nope, nope, politics doesn't, no, I don't want to do politics. It's
Hmm.
too crazy. I hate how, you know, DC works. Um, but he and I spent a lot of time together over the next couple of years. And finally, you know, I looked at it and went, you know, I see what you guys are doing. I see what's happening in Washington, and I realize that I have something to contribute. And if I didn't get involved, I would be doing a disservice to my time on the board of Surfrider, that if I wasn't doing enough. So I really looked at it as if I had to do it. You know, I didn't have a choice, because if I had already done 6 years at Surfrider and working with all these other nonprofit groups as well to protect our oceans, why would I not want to do more on the political side so they could be more effective and the things that I was concerned around could be addressed? So it was kind of like this natural, organic progression, and I was sucked into it, thankfully. And I had to learn a lot. And same thing, I asked a lot of questions, and I went to Washington, D.C. I met with lawmakers and, you know, understood how the game was played and how others were playing it as well. And then it was like, how do I weave all of this stuff into everything that I'm doing, even my own business? You know, it's like I started HDX, which is, a healthy hydration drink mix. And I wanted to take all of my experience with marketing and branding and storytelling and, you know, nonprofit work and political work, and, you know, use that within my own business as well, while I was helping other businesses too. And now, you know, it's like I've got this company that has good values, that puts out a product that, you know, reduces plastic waste, fights climate change, and helps people with their health through hydration. So it's all kind of coming together with everything that I want to do, and everything's connected in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's incredible. So to back up just a little bit, I think it's interesting that you mentioned coming from more of a place of kind of distrust within the political climate, because I think there's a lot of a younger generation that feels similar to that, and it can be interesting to sort of try and navigate around people's preconceived notions of what that is, and these like really visceral emotions that come out when you start to talk about anything political. Are there some pieces that you would pull out of those years that you spent learning more about that process if you were to try and have more of a conversation with someone about getting more involved with the political side of things in a way that feels a little bit more genuine and more true to who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk to young people about this all the time because I have looked at it closely. And, um, you know, there's so many things that people are doing. And I always say that, yeah, it's great that you're, you know, marching. It's great that you're, you know, not using plastic straws. You got your reusable bottle and all that stuff, and you're speaking out and you're using social media. But what I also say is, don't forget to vote. You know, voting is really how you create the type of community that you want to live in. You know, you elect people that align with your values, and you have to be part of the political process. If you don't like how something is being done, arguing and complaining about it on social media doesn't fix that problem. Marching doesn't fix the problem. You know, using reusable bottles doesn't fix the problem. All of that stuff helps, absolutely, but you got to vote, and you got to understand how the political process works. And you don't have to be like hardcore Republican or hardcore Democrat or anything. It's understanding how politics works, and using it in a way that you can help shape your values and in your community. You know, Orange County is one of those things. I think a lot of people were fed up with some of the congressional leaders in the area. And I've been trying to flip these seats for 3 different election cycles without any luck, with hundreds of thousands of other people, and finally we flipped all 3 seats this last election, but it was strategy, it was pragmatic thinking, patience, and we did it. And now all of these great things are starting to come about in our communities, in our districts and everything. Politicians in this area are saying, the environment is important to our businesses and we want to help protect our environment. That's, the previous guys didn't care about that, so I always tell people that they should learn about how the political system works, understand how they want to engage. And if it's simple as writing a petition, writing a letter, calling up their congressman, voting, any of that stuff, I think every single one of us, whether we're a consumer or a business owner, it's like, I look at CEO activism as something that's mandatory in this day and age. It's like, government officials are trying to dismantle stuff that's important to our communities, and businesses have a very powerful voice up on Capitol Hill. And I realized that last week, going up there and speaking on behalf of 2,400 members of the Business Alliance for protecting the Pacific Coast, but then also 46,000 members from the Gulf and the East Coast. I knew what they wanted me to carry up there on Capitol Hill. And, so I think it's important for all of us to be part of the political process.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it seems like, to what I had mentioned a little bit previously, was that it seems like it's this multi-pronged approach where you have to be involved in some level within business, but also within the political side of things, and also within how the environment fits into all of those, and how all these touch points play into each other, because they're so intertwined that you can't pull on one thing or try to understand one without really needing to start diving into all these other things. So it's interesting that you're working through a lot of this stuff with your own company, and how environmentalism and just stewardship in general plays a role in that, but also how that then is coupled with the political side of things, and that everything that comes in the gray areas of all of those 3.
Yeah. And what I would say, Nick, is that I think in the years past, if I look at it from our industry perspective, we look at action sports, it was really a matter of like, having good product. Okay. And everybody has great product now. Having stellar athletes, and everybody's got stellar athletes. Okay. And then it became like, okay, well, consumers wanted more than just stellar product and like the raddest new athlete to be convinced to buy a product. Now it's like, well, climate change and global warming, what are you guys doing to address that? Because I'm concerned about that. So, these organizations have been drawn into that conversation of like reducing waste out of their factories and manufacturing and being more sustainable. And you got to have the product, you got to have the athletes, but now you got to have all these other check boxes as well. Are you giving back to nonprofits? Which nonprofit are you working with? And now I'm seeing that, consumers are also looking at, supporting brands whose leaders speak up and aren't afraid to stand up to politicians. And you can see that with Patagonia, with what they do. Their customers have rewarded them for speaking out against this administration and some of their, proposed plans. So I think I would say what I'm trying to do is, let businesses know, regardless of what size they are, that, this is a template that they could use. It's like you have your marketing template, it's like, okay, great. This is what you're going to do for marketing. You got your social media playbook, you got your athletes, you got your product playbook, all these different things. But now what are you doing to give back? Are you aligned with a nonprofit? And is $1 from every sale going to this organization? And if so, I want to know how much is going and what the impact is. And, oh, by the way, what else are you doing? Because these politicians aren't addressing climate change or plastic waste, so I want to know if you're doing something about it. And if you're not, I bet another company that makes a similar product with you is checking all the boxes that are important to me. So what I'm trying to do is, share with these businesses, independent, small, mom, pop, medium, large, corporate, whatever, is that this is a template that anybody can use all the way across the board. And it's easy. It's easy, and it's, I think, more and more needed in this day and age, and consumers are requiring it. I think now it's almost like they come in with a checkbook of, like,
Hmm.
or a checklist. They're like, okay, I'm going to buy this brand, but what do they do? I want to do a little bit of research online. I want to see what their social media feed is. Is it just influencers who are just taking pretty photos, or are they really trying to, hit on something that's really important to me? So I look at it as a competitive advantage and also a growth opportunity for businesses.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how quickly that shift kind of happened. I mean, obviously over the grand scheme of things within the last, like 20, 30 years, it hasn't come very quickly, but the ramp up of how much that's bled into the marketing and business plans of multiple different businesses, but also different industries as a whole, how quickly that's kind of ramped up over the last not just a couple of years, but year itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think a couple of things are happening, and I don't want to bore your listeners with too much political talk, but you're hitting a chord, with what I'm passionate about, and that is that we have an administration that is kind of freewheeling on their own. They're not following the rule of law. They're not following the process. They're doing what they want to do, and they're creating a lot of chaos. But I think people are realizing that that's not what they want from their government and from their leaders. And that's why they're like, no, we don't want this from our elected officials. We want them to give us comfort and, security and confidence that they can protect us from, bad shit, and, not throw everything, down the drain because they want to, focus on their agenda, and, they want to be cruel to people. So I think that has been ramped up over the last 2 years. And I think every day it's being ratcheted up even more. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, you look and see what's happened and what's come out of this administration and how many people are getting fired up. And, I get emails all the time from companies going, gosh, what can we do? It's like, I can't believe what these guys are doing. What can we do? And, now I'm having to step in and say, here's what I would do. If I were at your company, if I was leading your company, this is what I would do. So I think what the big thing that's happening, and I feel fortunate to be in this position, because once again, I think everything that I've done for the last 30 years is kind of now, coming to a head with everything that's going on, is that I think there are people in government who would say that the system is broken. Our government is broken. And I would argue that point, that our government is not broken, but there are people out there who are trying to break it, purposely. They are trying to break our judicial system, our system of laws, and use everything in their power that they can to do so. But what's happening is that nonprofits, advocacy groups, consumers, and businesses are holding it together. They are the new defenders of our democracy and civility. So I think that is where, there's going to be more opportunities for businesses to step up.
Yeah, and I think it brings up a very interesting opportunity and perspective, because it seems like what is the norm nowadays is to just constantly throw out the baby with the bathwater, which is like, this isn't working in the way that it's being presented now, so that means we need to get rid of the entire thing and start over completely from scratch. And what I think is interesting is being able to talk to people such as yourself that are bringing forward more of this understanding of, like, listen, it's not the entirety of this whole thing. It's pieces that we just need to work better on. And what we're figuring out is that there are cracks in this system, but that it's not necessarily the overall thing that's not working. It's that we need to make it more resilient and bring it more up to speed, and more into the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of antiquated processes in our government, and look, it's a theme that I've said several times here on your show, is that getting more people involved in the political process will help fix some of these cracks. And it's great to see young people so involved. And look, I'll tell you, 30 years ago, when I had my shop and I was doing stuff with, Surfrider and the local nonprofits who are doing their beach cleanups and everything, it's like people looked at you funny. They're like, "Oh, you're going to do a beach cleanup? Are you kidding me? Why waste your time?" It's like, come on, that's lame. People look down upon you. They made fun of you. Now, 30 years later, it's a badge of honor. If you have a reusable bottle, if you do a beach cleanup, if you march. And I love that more people are getting engaged and are fighting for the right things. And I look at it and say that it's like, all these guys are using it as a badge of honor. Businesses are getting involved. They're getting pushed into it by their consumers. They're being pushed into it from their competitors. And it's a good thing. If we can get more people involved, it's only going to strengthen, our rules, our laws, our systems and everything. And we can get down to fixing them instead of trying to like throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's fix those things.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. So to kind of wrap things up a little bit, just because we're a little bit over the hour and a half now, what sorts of things keep you up at night? What sort of stuff or specific things are you focusing on, and where do you see all this going within the near future? Whether that's kind of all these broader topics or just specific things that you're working on.
Yeah. The only thing that keeps me up at night is juggling all the different projects that I've got, and also, all the fun things that I've got planned with my kid, that I can't wait to do. So that keeps me up at night in a good way. But what I'm doing is I'm shifting some of my projects and my workload. So there's some things that are coming off of my plate, and probably not serving on as many nonprofit boards as I am currently. I'm going to probably, step off of a handful of them to focus on just a couple that will align better with some of the projects that I'm developing. But for years, I thought that I wanted to start a nonprofit. I was like, oh, I'm going to start a nonprofit at some point. And I am doing that as well. But it's a different type of a nonprofit I'm starting. But what I really want to do is invest in businesses that are trying to solve a problem and help business owners unlock some of those opportunities to step into that. So, the idea is, sorry about that. I don't know how
All good.
But, what I want to do is help some of these organizations that are small entrepreneurs and businesses and, say, oh, you're trying to solve a problem around ocean health, and it has a sustainable product, that can be sold to consumers, that can keep this thing going and growing and make it impactful. That's what I want to do. So I'm looking for those types of businesses to get more involved with, whether it's on their corporate boards or through investments or just helping them navigate their growth opportunities and everything. Because I think the more businesses that we have that solve some of these problems, the better off we'll be. Because a lot of things that are facing our oceans are caused by businesses. We create a lot of trash. We cause climate change. Just all these issues stem from businesses, and not deliberately. It's just because of the system that we have. But if there's businesses out there that are solving a problem and they're, reducing plastic waste and minimizing climate change, and they're addressing all that around stellar product, that's where I see, myself headed, and that's where I'm going to be focusing on.
Awesome. Sweet. So where can people find more of your stuff and more of potentially any other, project that you want to get out there a little more?
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if any of your listeners want to follow me, the best place to engage with me is on LinkedIn. It's where people who are working, whether it's their own business or in a career, I feel that's where I can have the best impact, is helping people to understand what can they do through their jobs or their business. They can come to me at vipedesai.com. Starting to develop that website. So a lot of my goings on and where I'm headed and what I'm doing will be posted up there, just because there's so many different things happening that I need to have one place to kind of put it all. And then, if they want to see what's going on with my business, they can go to hdxmix.com and see all the rad stuff that we're doing there. But those are the three places that I'm most active. And then also on Twitter too, if anybody, plays on Twitter.
Awesome. Sweet, man. Well, I appreciate it. This has been absolutely phenomenal, and you've dished out an insane amount of knowledge. So I'm kind of excited to go through this, multiple times and pull out some more little nuggets that were within that entire thing.
Well, cool. Thanks so much, Nick. I appreciate you inviting me onto your show and sharing. And this is what I love to do. It's like if my experience gets into the ears of some of your listeners and they get fired up and inspired, and it lights a fire under their butt to go get going and do more stuff, then I'm stoked. I can't wait to hear those stories where people hear something that I was involved in or I talked about and it motivated them to take action. So thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. And just spread the knowledge, and keep it all going through, the next generation of people that want to pursue the same things and really solve some more problems that show up. So yeah, happy to have you. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nick.
Yep. Have a great rest of your night.
You too.
Bye-bye.